So thank you everyone for joining us today for our webinar where we'll be discussing how to achieve SIEM efficiency with breach and attack simulation. Today we've got Ben Forster, AttackIQ's Senior Director of Product, to share what's new with Flex 3.0, including our integration with Splunk. A little bit later, we've got AttackIQ's Senior Product Manager, Charlie Co-Teach, and Charlie is going to be taking us into the product to show us what those updates look like. If you guys have any questions during the presentation, make sure you put them in the chat or in our little question feature, and we'll have some time at the end to go over that stuff. So from there, I will hand it over to Ben to get started.
Thanks a lot. Good afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you are. I'm Ben Forster, Senior Director of Product Management at AttackIQ. Today, what we'll do is we'll be walking you through some exciting new features we've introduced into our agentless breach and attack simulation product Flex, specifically how we integrate with SIEMs. And then we'll, after my presentation, we'll follow up with a technical demo for you guys. Let's jump into it. All right, so to start, let's talk a bit about the threat landscape and how it's evolving, as this really sets the stage for what we're delivering in this new set of capabilities that I'm going to talk about here. So you've seen the news, we've got wars, new advanced persistent threats, the world's on fire, incredibly volatile cyber threat landscape on the horizon. We know that attackers are getting smarter. There's more sophisticated attacks. They're leveraging, complex behaviors more than ever before. We know that the time it takes an attacker to complete an attack, all elements of the kill chain can take weeks, sometimes months. But once an initial vulnerability is identified and a payload prepared, the time from executing that attack to completing objective can take only hours and sometimes just minutes. According to CrowdStrike, they calculated the breakout time as only decreasing from, I think it was about 84 minutes down to 62 minutes in February of this year. What that effectively means is that attacks are accelerating. So at the same time, we've seen we see it's taking organizations an average of 10 days roughly. IBM puts us at over 200 days to detect an attacker. And then at the same time, we're seeing a dramatic rise in the number of exploit-based attacks, which means that attacks that are, occurring as a result of flaws in code. Now, over the last couple of years, according to Mandiant, exploits have actually overtaken email as one of the primary attack vectors for organizations. Now, what's worse is that we're seeing an increased prevalence of 0 days. And with attackers leveraging AI, we're also seeing well over 26,000 vulnerabilities discovered in 2023. And then again, according to CrowdStrike, 75% of current threats are leveraging living off the land tools, not malware, which is up from 62% a few years ago. So, whereas we used to see a simple spear phishing email drop some malware, compromise the system, we're seeing more novel, never before seen attacks. And so the key really underpinning all of this is threat detection. And how does an organization, how does detection fare on average against these threats? How often are organizations able to detect these types of behaviors? So according to an Accenture presentation at MITRE AttackCon, an organization's effective detection coverage is really less than 1%. So that means that less than 1% of an organization's rules, detection rules, are actually up to date. And that's a pretty dramatic number, and obviously depends on the size of an organization. What we do know is that roughly 80% of an organization's rules are older than a year. Broken rules for a large enterprise can number in the hundreds. And this means a massive amount of false positives and missed opportunities to detect attackers. And at the same time, we see that a lot of organizations, I think it was Anton Chavakin at Google, had written a stat that, written a post where he was talking about over half of organizations are writing custom custom rules. Most of the rules that they're writing are custom. So that means that there's a big there's an onus on organizations to make sure that the rules that they're writing and that their detection coverage is actually doing its job, and clearly it's not. So if it isn't already apparent, why is detection important? So in order to stop these threats, you really need to have strong behavior-based detection that's focused on, adversary TTPs, not static, easily changeable things like malware hashes or C2 domains. And detection essentially is your last line of defense once prevention fails. And even if it does fail, the more accurate and broad the detections you have in your environment, the more likely you'll be to catch attackers once they've achieved access to your environment. And if your detection fails, then you're really going to have to revert to manually sifting logs to figure out the extent of an attack. And so robust detection is really essential to mitigate the risk in exploit-based malwareless attacks, which by their nature have never been seen before, or they've been seen with limited prevalence in the wild. And that's why focusing your detection on adversary behaviors and playbooks is so important. You could think about the pyramid of pain if you're familiar with that. And then lastly, many compliance mandates require, the ability to detect and respond to threats. So GDPR, for example, requires organizations to detect and respond to breaches within 72 hours and be able to identify unauthorized access and manipulation of, protected data. PCI requires monitoring detection of unauthorized system access, and that's the same with, HIPAA and FISMA. But it's actually really hard to improve your detections. Most organizations struggle with this. Even some of the most mature Fortune 500 companies that we've talked to, have struggled with this. And to really understand it, you need to understand the detection engineering lifecycle. And before I do that, though, what is detection engineering? So it's really the process of taking knowledge about adversaries and transforming it into specific detection rules, specific logic that can be implemented in your security products to catch threats. And the process really starts with research. It means identifying threats that are relevant to your organization, or identifying defensive gaps from red teaming, pen testing, could be incident response. And the challenge here is that organizations really get hundreds of detection requirements, and it's not possible to respond to each one. Once an organization gets the requirement, they need to identify the behaviors and the logic of the attack that they want detected by their security controls. And so writing these and researching these is really a manual and time-consuming process. And then finally, once you've implemented these rules, you need to identify the right test to validate them. So if the test is too generic, it won't accurately test the detection rule. For example, an organization might have written a rule to detect UAC bypass. However, the test that they're using to do that is for generic credential dumping. Or a rule might be meant to trigger registry modification related to run keys, but the test modifies a startup folder instead of the registry. So this is more likely to happen with organizations that have tons of rules, and few people or time to validate them, or the validation is done by a separate team from the one building the rules, and that's something that we've seen quite a bit of. So how do we make detection easier? But there are really 4 questions organizations need to answer. So, every modern organization has a SIEM for organizing and analyzing security information across their enterprise. So, the obvious question is whether your organization is getting that visibility. When something, happens on your endpoint, are your security controls actually sending logs and alerts to your SIEM? This is called a detection alert pipeline. The other question is, can my controls detect threats when prevention failed? Pretty obvious there. If you only have prevention insights, as I mentioned, you're missing the safety net of your security. How do I get instant insights? An organization might be performing incident response. They've identified and are containing a breach. And now the question is whether or not they're actually shutting the attacker out. So to know that, they need instant insights into their detection capabilities. Are they seeing everything they should be seeing? Or maybe they're standing up new infrastructure for branch location. Maybe they're performing M&A activity. They don't have time to set up, an agent, or, with our products, an integration manager. They need immediate insights. And so then the last question is, how do I fix my gaps? I've identified them. I've identified that my detections aren't performing the way they should be performing. What do I do now? What rules do I write? And so this is where Flex, with our newly announced Splunk integration, comes in. And Flex basically now includes the ability to agentlessly identify detection gaps anywhere on any device. And with seamless integration with Splunk, organizations can answer those questions, providing them with a more efficient way to validate their detection pipeline. Making sure that firewalls, EDR, are generating the appropriate logs and data that's being pushed to your SIEM for analysis and aggregation. And Flex gets this detection insight in minutes. And with Yara and Sigma rules, today it's Sigma, we're releasing Yara rules. The minute an organization identifies a gap, they can deploy a rule. And even for customers that have our enterprise product, which uses agents, this capability in Flex can supplement that by extending the detection capabilities that they have to devices where the customer doesn't necessarily have an agent deployed. And with the Flex app for Splunk, customers can see their agentless detection results in a centralized dashboard. So with this new capability, organizations really can continuously strengthen their detection capabilities. They're basically turning their security controls into a self-healing organism. You're testing your controls detection capabilities, with out-of-the-box adversary test design from the latest adversary research to make sure that you're properly evaluating your controls detection capabilities. Organizations can see detection gaps in minutes from any device anywhere. And then finally, we're leveraging, again, out-of-the-box detection rules to instantly fill those detection gaps with our native Splunk integration. And so what's the value to customers? Well, according to IDC research that we commissioned there, by improving detection capabilities with AttackIQ, we saw that organizations saw 44% cost reduction in security breaches, 47% more efficient security operations teams, and a 37% increase in the efficiency of their SOC analysts. So, better detection means identifying gaps in your control posture and not just detecting threats, but removing redundant controls. And from the combination of better efficiency, we're talking millions in per customer in savings. So with that, I will hand it over to Charlie for a look at our technical demo.
Thank you, Ben. That was a great introduction. Really highlights why detection is important. I'm about to share my screen now. Just want to validate that you guys are able to hear me.
Yep, hear you fine.
Thanks, everybody. That's perfect. All right, what we're looking at here is our AttackIQ Flex interface. This is our home screen. And like Ben said, AttackIQ Flex, it's an agentless BAS platform. It's lightweight and designed to help you simulate real-world attacks in devices without the need to deploy an agent. So essentially, it's as simple as identifying what it is that you want to test. For instance, you have a few featured tests in here with their descriptions. It's pay as you go. So depending on the amount of credits you have, you'll be able to run one or different tests based on your testing objectives. If you wanted to validate Cisco control, Cisco secure firewall extended baseline, then that is 1 credit's worth. And then you'd be able to run this test really simply on any device by downloading the test package, executing it on that device, and uploading the output. So if you go to the Analyze tab, let me go there really quickly. If you upload the output of what that test package will produce, then what you get is a report. And what the report will show you is all of your prevention results. Now, Ben very well presented prevention as kind of the layer of defense prior to detections being that last layer, right? So when you run these tests for prevention on different devices, you get a report that looks like this. So this is a security control baseline assessment report. And it's really simple. It's really download package, run, upload output, and you get this report. If you scroll down, there's a wealth of information in this report, including an overall baseline score. And in this report, we can really see what good looks like. So here, 18 out of 18 test scenarios were prevented. And if you keep scrolling down, you are able to see the different categories of testing that were done. Common malware samples was one category, sample analysis evaluation, and then MITRE ATT&CK TTPs that should be detected in a behavioral prevention evaluation category. And if you notice, prevention here, we get all check marks. This is how we always want it to be. So these are the categories that I mentioned before. And here you can see the actual test scenarios that were executed and whether each scenario execution or scenario test passed or failed. In this case, everything passed, but we know that's not always the case. And that's why we've introduced this new latest capability in AttackIQ Flex, which is the ability to integrate with Splunk to be able to also measure detections. And detections, Ben explained it really well. Detection rules is a great way to proactively identify malicious behaviors and be prepared as opposed to reactive, just be ahead of the curve in terms of identifying malicious behavior in the case prevention fails. So this is entirely new capability, and really all it takes to set up your integration with Splunk and add another layer of validation on top of prevention, this being detection, is downloading the installer, which you can get from here, AttackIQ Flex Detections from Splunk. You'll install that in Splunk. And then, because we want to be able to have things run smoothly and automatically, if you create an HTTP event collector, which you do in Splunk, then you'll be setting up automatic data transfer. Now, what does that mean? What that means is in the Analyze tab, every time you run a test and upload the output, you don't only get the report that I just showed you guys, but you also have the output of that test in the form of IOCs that will be forwarded to Splunk so that correlation happens and Splunk is able to marry their events with our information and say, your control effectively validated that this malicious behavior was detected. That'll become a lot clearer when I show you a little bit more. So once you install the app, by the way, this is roughly how you do it in Splunk Enterprise. Install app from file, you click on there, and then you choose the file, you upload, and then Splunk Enterprise will be all set up with our app. And then you'll be getting the welcome screen asking you to get started. Welcome to AttackIQ Flex Detections, where you get expanded detection validation, support for major security products, CrowdStrike Falcon, Cisco Secure Endpoint, and others. You get a handful of dashboards that you can monitor, and you get the ability to export to PDF. Now, controls are really an important part of this, right? Because in the end, you do want to validate detection for one or more of your controls. So CrowdStrike Falcon, Cisco Secure Endpoint, and we'll see how that plays out in a second. You go to the Getting Started page, which is our first page. You do get a walkthrough of how both types of data transfers work. You have automatic data transfer, but you also have manual data transfer. For some reason, you're not able to set up the automatic data transfer with the HTTP event collector. Then you can always just take the data from the Flex test output and manually upload it to your Splunk application. And you could do spot validation of certain tests. So that is perfectly feasible, something you can do. And here's a little bit of what I was saying before, right? So you have your AttackIQ Flex console from where you download your test packages. Those produce an output. You'll upload those into AttackIQ Flex to get that nice PDF report. But also we have the data that includes preventions, because we do want to factor in prevention so that you can also view that in the Splunk application, and IOCs. Now IOCs are key here because IOCs is what we use to correlate with the events that the security controls agent on your device forwards to Splunk. Now, if you ran a Flex package on a device where CrowdStrike Falcon was installed, and CrowdStrike Falcon forwards those events to Splunk, then that will take place. So the data is in Splunk from CrowdStrike Falcon. But then also, if you've set up automatic data transfer from Flex to Splunk, that data will also be forwarded to Splunk. And so what will happen is these dashboards that I'm about to show you in a second will show for each test what was prevented, which you can already see in Flex. But the new part, the really key part here is what Ben was speaking to, is was it detected? So I showed you guys the two modalities, manual and automatic. If you do automatic, not much to do. You're just ready to start visualizing all the data that's correlated and the results that are presented. If you choose to do manual, then you go to Flex, download the data that you need to validate detections, upload it in here, wait for correlation to take place, and then you'll be able to analyze these dashboards, which we're about to get to. I just want to show you in the Analyze tab, you can actually see that data transfer status will show you sent. What that means is every time you upload the output of a Flex test package and you have this configured as automatic, there's nothing else to do. You're immediately validating both preventions and detections. But all right, how does that look like? There's different tabs. We start out with the Overview tab. Now, this resembles the report a little bit because what this has is a prevention baseline coverage score, in this case of 44%. Like I said before, this takes all of the data that the Splunk app receives and averages it out to create a coverage score. So what this means is from all the data that you've provided, your prevention baseline coverage score is a 44%. Whereas in detection, you're not doing as well. You have a detection baseline coverage score of 11%. That's the first key metric that you get. Again, this is all fed from the data that is received both from your security controls agent, be it your CrowdStrike, your Defender, and AttackIQ Flex. If you scroll down, you get this graph as well with prevention and detection by test point or prevention and detection by package. Really, there's a lot of data here, but in a nutshell, what you want to do, because you have prevention rate in the x-axis and detection rate in the y-axis, is naturally you'd want everything in the upper right corner, which means 100% prevention, 100% detection. Now here, if you want to review the performance of specific tests like Gallium, Operation Tainted Love, you can see the prevention rate is of 20% and detection rate is of 30%. But if you want to actually make sure that a specific device is well protected or is performing as well as it could, then you switch to by test point. And in here you can see that this particular device has a prevention rate of 87% and a detection rate of 69%. If we keep scrolling down, you have test point upload stats. So that'll give you visibility into how much you're uploading or how much Flex is receiving, if you have it set up to automatic, per each test point or per each package. You do have that option as well. You always have the time range visibility. In fact, if for the sake of this story, this tendency here, I think if I reduce to the last 24 hours, detection is 0, I believe. So not doing very well, not much activity in the last 24 hours, which means we have to test more. That's what we always promote and what we always say. Testing should happen frequently. We have no visibility into what the outcome is or what the prevention baseline coverage is as of the last 24 hours. I would have to switch to last week or last month. Now that's the overview, right? Key metrics. If we go to test points, we have an entire page dedicated exclusively to test points. Now notice, like I mentioned before, that this is detection focused, but it doesn't mean that you can't review preventions in here. If you have a user, an operator, a practitioner that wants to also see preventions in here, they're able to do that. You have the ability to review test point prevention and detection. In this case, 152 scenarios prevented and 112 not detected and not prevented, which is not good. Prevention and detection by test point, historical results by test point. And what you could do is filter by package. So if you wanted to review this information, but focus on, say, SOGU PlugX malware emulation, then you can filter it to that specifically. And then lastly, the executions page. In the executions page, it's a history of sorts where you get everything that you've tested and that has been forwarded to Splunk. And if you select a specific execution, like security control baseline C2C, then that will load up all of the information for that specific execution. This provides a lot of details. So in this package that you ran, this was the scenario. It was prevented, but it was not detected. And that's where this comes full circle, because those reports that I showed before do include remediations and recommendations. The idea is to continuously improve your security posture and take those detections to those not detected outputs, to detected outputs. So that is what AttackIQ Flex 3.0 can do with this new version. With that, I'll hand it back to Liz. Open to any questions now.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie and Ben. Yeah, so we're going to pull up some questions that you guys had. So right now I'm seeing, what are the different security controls for which I can validate detection in Flex for Splunk?
Yep, that's perfect. And let me go back and share just 1 second, because there are different security controls that we support. Now, IOCs, really, every control should be able to forward events to Splunk, and therefore correlation should take place and detection can be validated. But we do heavily test for supported controls. And if I could show you really quickly what those are, let me go back to sharing my screen. There is an area where you can fine tune that even. So in the case that you're only interested in validating detection for CrowdStrike Falcon, you can turn on advanced fine tuning, which is a setting here in the settings tab. And if you turn on CrowdStrike Falcon, then what this will do is don't look for any data, any events from any controls that aren't CrowdStrike Falcon. Now that will improve efficiency, and it will focus our search, our correlation efforts to only the events that are being forwarded from this control. And you could do multiple controls as well. So what you see in this list is what we support officially, but we can always have a conversation around other controls. And because of the nature of how correlation happens, really any control should be able to work. We can always review that though.
Thank you to whoever asked that question. I see another question that says, you mentioned running the AttackIQ package. What does that process look like?
Sure. So running the AttackIQ package is really straightforward. Let me go back to sharing. All it takes, running a package is running a test. And what you're doing is you're testing the device that where you want to perform that test. You want to make sure that that device is protected in terms of preventions or detections. So in the test packages area, you get a library of tests. In fact, you not only have a featured area, but you have security baseline packages. That these are designed specifically to do standardized checks depending on what policies or baseline you want to validate. Cisco umbrella baseline or content filter baseline. There's a lot of content in here. There's also adversary emulation with specific APTs and adversaries and attack graphs. That's also available. Emerging threats, usually associated to CISA alerts. And then there's a compliance tab as well. But what you have here is the ability to take this package, any package that you're interested in. The way it works is if you have credits, which you have to purchase, I have 2,898 credits, for example. I am able to purchase this package that I'm interested in. I'm able to download it and then run it, Windows machine. Take the output from that file. That will produce a zip output, if I'm not mistaken. Then once you have that zip output, that is what AttackIQ Flex needs to produce that report that I showed you guys. So let's say you've done that. You have a Windows machine. I'm on a Mac here. But if I were in a Windows machine, I download the package, I run it, I take the output that it produces, and then I go to the Analyze tab. And here in the Analyze tab, it says click to upload. What I do is click to upload, find my file, upload it there. And once that's done processing and credits have been processed, then that's all set. All that I have to do, you'll get a new entry here for the test that you just executed and the ability to view the report. And if you've integrated with Splunk, you'll also have and configured the automatic data transfer. You'll have that data sent to Splunk automatically to validate detections as well.
And then let me see like two more questions we'll do. Can you expand on the prevention and detection baseline coverage scores and how they work?
Yes, I believe I covered that, but I'll happily do it again. That is here in the overview tab. And really what it is about for the time range that you selected, we will take the entirety of all the scenarios that have been executed in order to provide you a high level overview, high level score metric that you can use to measure how well you're doing holistically in terms of prevention and in terms of detection. You also see this in the report in the form of a prevention bar only. It's a lot easier to see here too, right? Because report in this case, it's point in time. While the Splunk app is continuously fed with information, this is a snapshot of a moment where you ran a test on a device the way I explained before. And in this instance, the outcome was what we always want it to be. It's 18 out of 18 scenarios prevented. And so the bar is full. But if it had been half of those scenarios out of every one that was executed that were prevented, then the bar would be half full. So that's what the overall baseline score does. I want to use the question also to show something I didn't before, which is the ability to export to PDF. Those Splunk dashboards, you do have the ability to produce those as PDFs.
And then just last question from Marvin was if, these slides and the presentation is going to be shared with everybody. So we have recorded this session and we will be sending it out over email to everybody that registered. If you came in late or had to leave early, you can also find it on our website under the resources tab. And if you are interested in webinars like this in the future, you can look at our website and go to the webinars tab. That is where we will be posting future as well as previous webinars. So thank you to everybody who is still with us, and we hope you have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.